Now we're diving into American Illustration 34. And we have our book designer coming up first. Eric, hi. Hi. I just say hi to everybody. Good to see you. Ping, hi. How are you? Nice to see you. But make your way carefully across the stage. Hi. I'm good. How are you?
Good to see you.
Hi. How are you? You can't, yeah. So very, very pleased to welcome our next panel. And again, we're doing the same thing. 2 art directors, 2 illustrators come together to have a conversation about everything that's important, right? Big, heady questions, nuts and bolts questions, all kinds of things. So again, no big introductions. You can find them online. But on your far left, we begin with Eric Skillman from the Criterion Collection, a juror for the book, a designer for the book, who designed the book. Next, we have Ping Zhu, illustrator, who's featured in this year's annual. And next, Sarah Garcia, art director from Ink Magazine, a juror for this year's book. And then we have Josh Cochran, illustrator, who's also honored in this year's book. So, lots of questions have been passed around. Eric, can I throw to you to start things off?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so the thing we sort of talked about maybe touching on is just the idea of, I just want to talk about people's sketch processes and what, as illustrators, you guys are, what kind of thinking goes into the kind of sketches you send, for like a tight sketch versus a loose sketch, or a color sketch versus a black and white sketch, or whatever details, and then hopefully talk a little bit about what that translates to on the art director side of like what we have to do with that sketch once we get that sketch, and what we're looking to see and what you're looking to tell us, essentially.
I'm also kind of interested to see what you guys prefer, because I feel like there's 2 camps, right? Like the loose sketch illustrator and the tight sketch illustrator, where the sketch is almost like the final. Because I'm in the loose sketch category, and I like to have a little bit of the mystery involved with that. But I don't know. You're a little different, maybe. Right, Pam?
I'm also in the loose sketch camp, but I do throw some color in there for, pretending that I'm in the tight sketch camp. But I think it really does depend. Like, I definitely use the sketch in the final. I kind of blow it up to size and I trace it onto the paper that I'm going to be painting the final on. But I don't also want to surprise anyone. So it's loose enough to the point where I feel like if we both understand it, then it's fine. Or if they need it to be cleaned up, then that's been requested before as well. But overall, loose is kind of the way to go. And also it makes the final a little bit more surprising and more interesting, I suppose.
Because we want to be surprised to a certain extent.
But a good surprise, not like a "what have you done" surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
I just want to ask, has that happened to you, where you go to a final and someone's like, oh no? After they approve the sketch?
I think maybe it was more of the technique in the final. It wasn't the sketch that was misinterpreted. It was like, oh, we thought it would look more like this other piece that you did. So I think then it's harder to show that in a sketch. And then you just attach references of previous work. So that's been the only bad surprise.
It's definitely happened to me.
Not by me, though.
No. God, no.
A little bit by me.
I haven't worked with you guys yet, so prepare yourselves.
Yeah. It's sort of been something that's been on my mind a little bit lately because I've had sort of both extremes of the experience where I have some illustrators will send me just these incredibly tight sketches, and we've fall in love with the sketch, and then the actual final comes in, and it's very, very close to the sketch, but it's it's not that much better. It's not. It's like there was something in the loose whatever, which is always sort of disheartening to have to tell somebody I just liked your sketch a little better than what this was. We've published a couple sketches recently, recently, which is, that's an awkward thing. But then the flip side of it is I feel like I've been getting the sketches that are the sketch you do for yourself instead of the sketch that communicates something to the art director for whatever reason. like the lines that like, well, this line represents, I'm going to put two people in the background here, but like, and I like that sketch, but I like that sketch as long as it comes with, the 2 paragraphs explaining what every line is. You know what I mean? Like, I like the loose sketch with the conversation. Like,
Right.
and I'm going to do it in this style. Like, here's an example of this other piece where I did this kind of technique. Oh, I'm going to do this bit over here. I'm planning something like this. Which, is usually not a problem that I can just kind of ask that question and get that information. But I don't know, I've had both extremes of that lately in this sort of, I don't know.
I was always under the impression that it was good to send something with no explanation, because if you're able to see what's happening, then then it's a good image. But if I have to write a paragraph, then for me that seemed like kind of a failure on my part.
Well, but that's the thing, is I think that would be a failure of a final piece,
Right.
but it's not a failure of a sketch, because the sketch shouldn't. If the sketch was everything, you wouldn't need to do a final.
Right.
Right, like, so, and I can think of a piece we did recently where, sometimes there's just details that creep into the sketch, and you're like, I don't know if that's an intentional thing you're doing or not. Like, where one artist we were working with had just this incredible, like these really loose lines, but like this incredible difference between her thick lines and her thin lines in the sketch. They were just like crazy thick brushstrokes and like teeny tiny little skinny lines, and like judging from some of her other work, I wasn't sure if that was something she was intending or if something that just kind of happens in the sketch process or whatever. So I, kind of pushed back on that. And I think it wasn't something she had been intending to do, but that was sort of what we fell in love with out of that sketch. So like, had I not, had I assumed, I think that would have gone poorly. Like if she was just assuming that I was going to interpret it one way and I was like picking up on a little detail that was just, no, that's nothing,
Actually, I feel like we should talk about the thing I just did for you, because I just did a piece for Eric, and the sketch was kind of tight in a way.
It was that was actually a situation where the sketch was a lot tighter than I thought it was.
Yeah.
Or like the final, like you were intending to do it in a looser way than.
Yeah.
Like because the sketch was so tight, I assumed you were going to make it tighter, because I've seen your loose sketches. You know what I mean? Like, so because it was like relatively whatever, I was like, oh, he's going to add these details, whatever.
You just called yourself loose sketch.
I know, but I roll the dice a lot when I.
It's like 80-20.
But
I was going to call you out when you said that, but I didn't want to like, sure, whatever.
But I guess your comments were like you thought it was going to be a lot tighter than what I turned in, and
tighter as I had assumed details were going to be added that weren't added, which I think was fine ultimately, but it was
right.
It wasn't like that. I love that final piece. It looks great.
The piece,
yeah.
For the record, the piece turned out great because Eric had a good hand in it, and you shepherded it. It was much better after I added way more details, and it turned out.
It really was. It was like 2 little things you added. It wasn't that much.
But well,
they were important things, but they were like 2 little things.
I feel like we should have
Yeah, sorry.
should compare it up there. It's good that we don't. But I think that's kind of the great thing about working with a good art director, is that you guys have you're able to see, you're seeing it from over here, and we're like, it's like in our front of our faces. So I don't really always have the foresight,
Yeah, the thing that I think that I wanted to kind of add too is just the idea that, like we've worked together a few times, and we have, and I kind of trust your instincts, and I'm happy to kind of go with them for the most part. But so when I'm asking for more detail on a sketch, it's rarely because I need to know for myself. Like my own philosophy tends to be like, if you found the right person for the job, they're going to have some good instincts and whatever. But the sketch comes to me, and then it's got to go to 3 or 4 other people that have, and like Criterion actually has a relatively light number of people that have to see it, I think, compared to some other places. It's really like at least 2. Sometimes there's like licensors and stuff, like 3 or 4, but it's relatively light. But those people don't necessarily have an illustration background or an art background, and they don't always know how to interpret sort of like or how to visualize the way a sketch is going to go to the final. So I have to spend a lot of time sort of explaining what this is going to be. You know what I mean? Like I have to explain like, oh, well, yeah, it's doing that here, but he's intending to turn this into this, or she means to you know, bring this color in here, or she means to do whatever, and this is just indicating it's not actually a thing yet. So a lot of times those sort of questions and stuff are because, you know, I ask you the questions that I'm going to get asked, basically. You know, for
Yeah,
whatever
I can agree with that. And also my approval process is like 2 or 3 people as well. But it's like, I love a loose sketch because I just want the idea. But then I get my editor going, is that a little pig in the background? Why is that little pig there? What does that mean? I'm like, oh God, keep the pig in? Can we just keep the pig in? So, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
The descriptions help if the sketch is really loose.
Good to know.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like taking notes. It's like, don't draw a little pig in the back.
Also,
or
if
at
it's
least
real-
if it is, make it clear.
Also, if it's really tight, my editor will be like, it's done? We didn't even get to approve it. It's already done? And I'm like, no, it's not. This is the sketch. Like, yeah, so.
I love
They
the editor
get quite
voice.
confused. We get, you know, only slightly confused, but they're really just.
So how do we help you lessen that experience, or like to make it more streamlined? Like, is it helpful to have a description and like a loose sketch with, you know, some color on it or no color, or, you know, what is, you know, for someone who hasn't worked with you guys yet, what do you want? Tell me how I can help you.
Well,
I like to have a loose sketch with just a little bit of description, especially if it's someone I haven't worked with before. Like Josh has done stuff for the magazine numerous times, so it's like, oh yeah, it's Josh, and we know his style, and we know, you know, this or that. But if it's someone new, then it helps to have a little description, or say it's gonna look like this, and like show a sample. Or a lot of times, if it's someone new, I'll be like on your website going, oh, okay, I like this style, or you know, this color scheme or whatever. But
Yeah, that's interesting because I actually put my sketches on my website as partially because I feel like it's important for maybe students and also like future art directors when they look at it, that they can see a transitional period between like, this is how an idea starts and you can expect this, and then it gradually turns into the final, and the distance between those two things could look a little related, and maybe that helps to, you know, lessen some anxieties. I don't know if that's ever been helpful, but maybe you guys haven't been on my website, but
I think that's great. You don't see that a lot on
Websites.
people's websites. Yeah.
Yeah.
sorry.
No. I think that is helpful. I would say, as far as like what the illustrator can do to help the art director, it depends a little bit on the, you know, how tight of a style you have. Like I think both of you have sort of like 2 or 3 different registers that you kind of go between, maybe. You know, like you're not. I feel like, certainly with Josh, and I haven't worked with you, but if I feel like I would have not too difficult a time saying like, you know, oh, like, you know, in this kind of register, like, and kind of envisioning stylistically what it's going to be like. Right. There's a couple people we work with that just like every damn thing they make is like a whole other adventure. Like, you know, like, and for those people, especially like, you know, I value that versatility. I think it's cool, but I need like, okay, like, are you going to, you know, like spray paint your driveway and like draw on it in chalk, or are you going to like, you know, like build a sculpture out of cardboard and set it on fire? Like, I need to know kind of like what you're intending here, like what you're trying to pull it through. Yeah. So depending on sort of how much variation you have in your style, I need, you know, more or less description. I would say, as far as like the description stuff, I really just need to know like all your like kind of non-negotiable plans at this point. You know what I mean?
That's
like,
true, yeah.
Like if you like put some line in here that like in your mind means, well, you know, shit, like that's you know, a swash of blue watercolor in the middle, and like that is the most important piece of this thing. Like I need to know that it's going to be blue and it's going to be watercolor because, you know, somebody might have an opinion about that. You know, but if you know, and when it's things like, I don't know entirely what I'm going to do with this section over here, I just kind of want to explore it as I'm doing the final thing. Like that's fine. Just you know, tell me that too.
So communication is key.
Communication is what I'm saying.
Got you.
Yes.
Cool.
All right.
Is there, We brought out like a list of questions.
Are we gonna back up now?
Are we in backup mode?
I'm gonna get it.
I actually had a question. When you guys are like trying to find someone that's perfect for this assignment, because I did a little art directing for the op-ed page. Oftentimes, I found it was interesting to try to match up someone that you wouldn't normally think to do for something. And is that a good experience in your, while working, or do you try to keep things pretty, you don't want to like make things too unpredictable, or
Before
is that
you answer
important at all?
that, can we throw up the AI slideshow?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You guys have memorized our names by now, right?
Yeah, right. I kind of go back and forth. Like, there's some assignments or some stories I get that are like, oh, it's like I need someone super conceptual, and there's so many people to choose from. Or like you did a map for me, I think maybe a couple years ago, and it was like it could have been a really technical map and like super technical, but I was like, no, I want it to be more like artistic and rough and loose lines, and I think it came out great. So I kind of go back and forth with that. But sometimes it's like the assignment comes in and I'm like, oh, this person, definitely, I don't know how it is for you when you're assigning. But.
I like that idea in theory. I don't really do it that way for the most part. Like as far as kind of finding the wrong person and sort of seeing what they would do with it doesn't not wrong, but you know what I mean. What you're talking about. Mostly because we do 2 illustrations a month maybe. You know what I mean. And it's not. I feel like it would be different if it was a magazine or something where you have 5 different opportunities within the same space, and if one thing kind of goes a little weird, you can course correct elsewhere or whatever. But with us, like each film is sort of its own little monument that we're trying to kind of build to it. So you really have to sort of take that film as
Stakes are higher.
It's not stakes are higher, but it's like that director of that film deserves that amount of respect too. So I'm not going to experiment with this one director which is not to say that we don't get. I'd like to think we have some kind of unexpected choices, but they come from watching that film and latching onto something and saying this could be the thing, not that sense of like, I don't know what this guy would do with this, but I'm curious. Like I don't get to be that curious in that setup just because of the particular world of it. Or I get to be curious on a less traumatic scale, I guess.
Is it backup question time?
Let's do it.
I know.
No? Sarah, you had one, right?
Oh. I'm just gonna put this away.
It's not really a question, but I just wanted to talk briefly about promotional materials that illustrators send to us as art directors, and I know that people spend like a lot of money. You guys spend a lot of money on this stuff usually.
I'm gonna be really honest and say that I've not done any promos.
Okay, well, I just wanted to talk about like promotions in general, and like whatever you guys do, you could talk about too. But
Yeah.
like for myself, I open everything I get, but I know I'm like the 1% that will open an envelope. So there's a lot of art directors who won't open envelopes. And I know it sounds like I'm on a rant, but like when you send stuff in an envelope, it may not get opened. So even just sending like the promo postcard with like the address on back, where it's just, I get the image and I see this like crazy image and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And I put it up on my wall. But, if it's an envelope, people may not even get to the image.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever not opened an envelope, and I will say that I have a personal kind of weakness for whenever anybody sort of does some little doodles around my address. Yeah. I just think that's cool.
It's not a weakness.
Well,
Also, stickers are good.
Oh, stickers.
I like stickers. I don't know.
Sure, the stickers are fine.
Like on top of the envelope or inside?
No, like
So it's
as
sticker
the
sheet.
item, because then I'll stick them on my laptop.
I'm not a great arbiter of that sort of thing, because I think I've hired in 14 years of doing this job, I think I've hired 2 people from a blind submission kind of a thing. you know, because we do a relatively small number of things, like I'm hiring the people that I've wanted to hire for 5 years, you know what I mean? Not the people that, you know, sent me a postcard, which is not to say I don't get great postcards. And I do feel a little bad when I get these like elaborately produced, you know, like I know that cost $20 to print that like thing, and I'm sorry that it's going to go on my shelf and I'm not going to look at it again. Like if it goes on my shelf, even, no offense, but yeah.
Is it better to then, I mean, there's so many different forms of promotion these days, I feel.
Because I think you say you don't promote, but I don't think that's true at all.
I've done one promo, and that was in college.
But I mean,
like a physical promo.
yeah, you don't physically promote, and
Yeah.
I think that's just one aspect. You know, there's like the Instagram post, there's the the email blast,
And Behance. A lot of people
the
are on Behance
Behance
now.
post.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean,
Tumblr.
there's just all these different things that doesn't necessarily mean physical. You know, because when I was in school, it was all about the postcard.
Right.
And maybe the question is, how important is the physical thing? And even and dare I say, the annual is also in that category too. And so how important do these
Fighting
things
the hand,
stack up amongst each other, you know, compared to like something so easy as like you post something on Instagram, you know?
I mean, for me, I like the physical things. They're cool, but you know, in all honesty, like I've probably, because the physical thing, I have to, you know, you get usually one image, and then if you like it, you have to like actually, you know, walk from my little mailbox over to my computer, type it in. I rarely do that step. You know what I mean? Like, but when I get an email, and maybe there's one image in the email, but like I almost always click the portfolio link, and so I mean, you get the value of like, then I've seen, you know, 5 or 6 of your pieces at least, you know, which is usually a better kind of experience for me, like to see some range and versatility. I've gotten plenty of postcards where like I like the one image on the postcard, and then I go to the portfolio and I'm like, oh, I really just like the one image on the postcard.
Yeah.
Whatever that's worth.
Yeah, I guess I've just been using like Instagram and websites and Twitter and like more social media channels to get my work out, because when I say like I've not done a physical promo in a long time, sometimes people are also like really surprised, because I think we're in that same camp of most people expect promos like when we were graduating. But I think, you know, when I graduated, Twitter was really not a thing to be using as social media or like to even use as promotion. It was more like, here are my thoughts and a few characters. But I think people have just like readapted and like used it for new purposes. And I think, you know, depending on how people look for other people for new work, I imagine that you guys are always like looking for new illustrators. I hope anyway.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's one reason why I do like getting at least just a postcard. Because I do have a wall in my cubicle of all the postcards that I like. And sometimes I just have, my desk is kind of messy. I'll just have like a pile, because I'll be like, oh, look at this is so good. And then I put it on a little pile. And then when I get an assignment, I'll be like, oh, let me go through that pile, because there's that one really cool image. And I'll like,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I like to get at least the physical postcard, because if I have it up and then I get a story that I'm like, oh, that's finally going to match, then it's like on my wall, and I'll look up your website and blah, blah. But I'll also look up, if you send me like an email blast, then I'll click on your website. But yeah.
So you're not using social media at all
I'm
for
old.
finding work?
I do use social media, but I don't use it to find illustrators. I'll use Behance, or I'll look in the annual or on the website for the annual.
What about you, Eric?
I mean, yeah, I actually don't really, I mean, the mechanism for, like, once I'm following you on Twitter, I'm not finding you anymore, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm like following my friends.
I mean, I follow illustrators on Twitter, but like, it's not like I found them on Twitter. It was like I found them some other way, and that's why I'm following them on Twitter. So it's like I wouldn't see your tweets if I didn't already know who you are. So not, you know, I don't know, as a method of discovery, I don't know how valuable that is. Although I'm also old, so I don't know.
I've got someone young up
I'm
here.
not that old, but I mean, like the social stuff, I think it's so about like what your network is that it's really, you know, it's only reaching the people you already know, which is not necessarily great to be discovered, but apparently it works and people like it. So
Yeah.
I'm also like I said, I'm always looking, but I'm less able to act on that on that look until a lot later usually. Like, you know, I find somebody and they go in the drawer, and then, you know, like 5 years later I get to call them, you know.
Also, sometimes I'll have other art directors email me like, oh, I just met this young illustrator and I think they'd be good for your, they're not good for my magazine, but they might be good for your magazine. Like sometimes I'll meet people and I'm like, oh, your style is so cool, but I just know it's never gonna fly at my magazine. So then I'll be like, oh, talk to my friend who works at, you know, some other magazine. So word of mouth, I think, helps, and going to events and stuff, meeting people.
Cool.
Do you guys feel any responsibility to hire, this is in the backup questions, hire like people that are, you know, maybe not white male illustrators, or like, do you feel like you want to hire like a diverse range of people? Like, is that like really important or kind of important, or is like the biggest priority is just to have a good piece of art?
Oh, for me, I don't even know sometimes what people look like. Once I hired someone, I thought it was a woman. It was a man.
Yeah, because I wonder about that because, you know, because when people are flipping through the magazine or, you know, looking at a product or whatever, they see the art first. Mm-hmm. And maybe, you know, we were talking about this at lunch, maybe they will see the name really small on the inside and like, you know, like Ping Zhu, you don't know if that's a dude or...
I've been mistaken for a male.
Uh-huh.
Maybe in person.
And like no one knows that I'm Chinese.
Just kidding.
Or, you know, there's like all these different things to it. And so I wonder, like, is that important, you know, just to, like, if you know that person's like, you know, like a woman and Chinese or something, and the subject is maybe something related to that, like, is that an important thing? Because a Chinese woman will think differently.
Oh.
We really do.
Oh. I never thought of it that way.
Not necessarily think differently, but like maybe
For
they
this,
were
like,
raised a
specific
different
story.
way. Yeah, exactly.
Like, so if I get a specific story, like, takes place in China, then I would hire.
Uh-huh.
I did that actually for the first time a couple issues ago. We had this special, like, women's package, entrepreneur, my magazine's for entrepreneurs, and it was all about women entrepreneurs. So I made a point to only hire women illustrators. And I was like, yes, it's awesome. But that was the only time, just because it was so specific that I wanted it to like match the subject.
I would say that's something that I definitely have on occasion tried to do that. I do think it's important. It's hard for exactly the reason you say it, that like I just don't know who anybody is in real life. You know what I mean? Like, or people that I don't already know, right? Like I don't know, you know, what ethnicity or race or gender or whatever they identify as, you know, unless they are actively, you know, posting pictures of themselves and you know, in their bio or whatever. And I don't necessarily, you know, I'm not going to tell you that that's a, you know, from a practical perspective, I have no idea if that's a good or a bad thing to be doing or what, like, you know, making yourself more of a personality versus just, you know, the work speaking for itself. I mean, I don't know which is better or not, but I have tried to do that. I think I've actually more often tried to. Actually, that's where I've done the thing that you were talking about earlier, as far as like trying to find the unexpected choice or whatever. I've tried to not like I don't want to give Yuko Shimizuwa Japanese titles. I don't want to give, you know, like I want to make sure that it's not. That I'm not like stereotyping people into like, well, you get all of these things because you're this, and you get all of these things because you're this. I'm trying to get, you know, sort of more interesting perspectives when I can. And then occasionally there's times where, you know, a particular film will come up and like, you know, whatever, like this filmmaker was, you know, a militant feminist who, you know, did not want to work with any men at all in her film or whatever. So it would seem, you know, a betrayal of her values. That specific situation has not happened. I don't know why I just made that up. But, you know, like whatever, like, but there are times when it's you know, something, you know, that's intrinsic in the artistic philosophy of the film that we're working on, and so you kind of want to honor that a little bit and find somebody that is simpatico, although that's usually more of a mental thing than a it's usually more like, you know, finding somebody with the right, not the right politics, but you know, like. It just for me, it's you know, we get a lot of political filmmakers versus, you know, specifically nationalistic filmmakers. And also, we work on a lot of European stuff, so I want to not give all the European stuff to European people, white people.
What else do we got?
Back
Well-
to question number 2.
I think there was a question about like how responsible you feel as well in like shaping the career of a young illustrator, or like kind of giving someone their first job, or like an opportunity for, experiencing what it's like to work as an illustrator for the first time, or like, in their first or second year. And also, I guess the other end of that is like also how responsible do you feel towards like older illustrators and like kind of keeping them relevant in working in the modern day? Go.
Yeah, one thing before we open that, because my first job was from Stephen Heller from the book review, and this was a time when he would only hire from a certain short list of people, and I got jobs from him every single week, and I did some really bad work for him. But I think the difference with that situation was that he kind of like helped teach me in a way. Like I learned a little bit about coming up with ideas, and so I got better, as it came along. So I wonder if that is that still happening nowadays, or just almost feel like now there's so much good work out there, so many illustrators, so easy to find people that short list doesn't really exist anymore, And maybe the same way with hiring people that aren't as fashionable, that are older, or I don't know.
I think when I first started out, I had a short list, and now it's just, there's like no list.
Vast.
It's just vast. But I'm not opposed if a young illustrator who maybe doesn't have that many like editorial jobs under their belt reaches out to me, and they're amazing and they fit the story, then I'll totally hire them and help them along as far as like, with what we talked about with like the sketch phase, and okay, I need this for my editor or whatever. If they're really talented, I feel like that's just the talent can speak. It doesn't matter like how many years they've been doing it. And
Yeah, I'd say that's true. I don't have a lot of complaints about my job, but to the degree that I have a complaint, it's actually that I can't do the sort of short list thing that Josh is talking about, because, partially because of how relatively little work we commission in a given year or month or whatever, and part of it is that because we're so focused on, the Criterion collection, like the films as a collection, so we sort of are maybe a little more, we're very aware, I would argue maybe slightly more aware than we need to be of like unintentionally creating connections between two different films. Like, if I had a certain artist work on, a Kurosawa film, and then I have a Bergman film coming up, like, and they have a recognizable enough style, like, am I accidentally, implying some sort of confluence between Kurosawa and Bergman that I don't mean to imply? And so, that's like a strike against somebody for hiring them again. So actually, there's not that many people that I've worked with, more than, once or twice or whatever. Like Josh, I think we've worked together like 3 times, and that's, you're in the like upper, like register of people. Really, like,
you're the top list.
I think like the people I've worked with most is like 5, So I really don't get to sort of develop that kind of relationship over time that I think would be really beneficial, because the times that I do get to go back to people, like, just sort of having, not in the sense that like I'm training them how to do anything, but just in the sense that we've sort of trained each other.
Yeah.
We know how each other work, and then it's always smoother the second time. Of course, that's anything's going to be like that, and so I think would be really great to be able to do, and to the question of like young artists, young illustrators, like, because I can really only, I'm only doing like one project at a time, like it, I don't know that I'm going to be anybody's like mentor or anything. Like I'm not really qualified for that. I like to try to give people a shot if they're, like you say, if they're the right person for the project. I don't think I've ever said, I don't know, this person doesn't seem like they're a professional yet. You know what I mean? Or like, I would go with the quality of the work over, the years of experience. And to the flip side of the question, there were a lot of questions embedded in
there
that
were
one
2.
question. Yeah. And then Josh
It's a
had
loaded
third.
question. Yeah.
3 questions.
Yeah, 3 questions.
I mean, I guess from our perspective, it's kind of nice. I mean, we've had art directors that we've worked throughout the years, and you know, it's not like a static thing what we do. You know, it's like a fluid. Like our styles kind of changing, and our tastes are changing, and it's nice to have someone that you're like kind of have a rapport with, and you're working with over the years. You're kind of developing, like coming up together, and I sense that that's kind of being lost nowadays a little bit more. I mean, at least I know at the times it's just like the floodgates are open, you know, and just you can just choose like a sea of people, you know, and they're all like equally good, which is daunting. And
yeah, I mean, I think from an end like product, like, you know, the end result perspective, like there's a lot to recommend that. Like it's great. Like you're getting this like diversity of voices, you're getting, you know, a lot of different styles, and you're getting, you know, to expose a lot of people to the world that they might otherwise be exposed to that world. But, you know, from a, you know, workflow, you know, actually getting down to the business of it, like, you know, it's nice to not have to explain, you know, what a DVD insert is to, you know, everybody, like for the, you know, 8,000th time.
Yeah, no, my first job was also through the Times, and I don't think I was on that kind of short list thing, but I feel at that point they were just like giving more opportunities, and it felt nice that you have like an entry point into the world of illustration. At least the Times just felt like that first step that everyone is kind of like, oh, I'll try this out and see what it's like. And, you know, you experience working with an art director for the first time, and then you get the feedback, and it's a little bit different from school. But I definitely feel like different types of art directors have given different types of opportunities. You know, like your style of working is very different. And I think, you know, the reoccurring clients these days are, you know, for publications, usually for editorial work that you see every few months. I've never had like a weekly thing aside from like a column, but I think, you know, when you work with someone long enough, I feel like they trust you enough where you can also kind of push your style a little bit so it doesn't feel like the same thing over and over again. It certainly feels like, you know, also when it comes to working with new people, like I think I tread more carefully, but, you know, getting this, you can feel a tone through emails or just like even a phone call. And like maybe you're like, oh, I've been feeling like I wanted to try this thing. Like you just kind of push a little bit. And I think that kind of relationship, you know, even though if you never work with them again, it seems like a nice thing to have experienced. And, you know, like maybe that mindset can apply in a different way later on. But I've never been like, well, I'm going to burn that bridge immediately. So it's never been like that.
what's next?
Let's see. Should we talk about money?
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. We had one question that was about, like...
Time and money? That one?
Huh?
The one about time and money?
Oh, time and money. Yeah. Is it...
There's not
There was
a lot
another
of
one.
time.
If it was okay to, like, for an illustrator to ask for more time
No.
and
never.
money.
Never, ever,
Never?
ever. No, I'm just joking.
Oh, I was like, oh, God. Better send
Never
some emails
extra
now.
time or money. No.
No, I think it's okay to ask, just as long as it's okay that the answer sometimes is no.
Is it obnoxious? Because I've had
No.
art director friends who have told me that it's kind of annoying that illustrators are
I don't know how often you do
constantly
it.
asking for
All the time.
$200 more, or like, you know, another $100, or, you know, kind of like penny pinching a little bit.
Yeah,
And-
just like, come on, I hear those coins rattling
or
at the
like
bottom of the
it's
barrel.
like the day before the finals due, and because I'm under the impression, and I'm so sorry that I do this, but sometimes, you know, things just get crazy, and it's like I need a little extra time, and I'll just be like, hey, I need more time.
Yeah.
So is that obnoxious?
No,
or?
for my magazine, it's a monthly, so when I give the date to the illustrator,
I won't tell anyone.
I give like a padding, so I'm not going to give the date that the magazine's going to press, because that would be irresponsible of me. And, you know, things come up. So if the illustrator gets sick, or if the story changes in the sketch phase or whatever. So I give myself a couple days to pad it, so that way if something were to happen and the illustrator's like, oh, I had a death in the family or whatever, I need a few more days, then I have those days, because I usually give a little
So
bit.
death
on
in
an
the
early
family
day.
is your
Yeah,
like
that's the
cutoff
only
point.
reason.
No,
Death in the
death
family is like
the
anything
only-
less than that. I want it in.
No death, no extension.
We do have like regular occurring illustrations that we have the same person do every month, and I'm on a flow with them, so I kind of know, oh, okay, they're gonna be like a day late or, whatever. So yeah, I'm cool with like a little late.
You're the cool art director.
I am. Okay.
Yeah. You're in the
and-
cool club.
And I've had the money thing come up, and mostly it's come up because I hire someone new, and they're doing a style that I'm not that familiar with, like some kind of like super crazy 3D type thing, and they're like, oh, whoa, no, this is gonna like we have to make a thing, and there's like all this involved. So usually those are the illustrators who are like, I need this much more because it's like a bigger process, or they're like setting up a shoot and then,
Do they get more money if they
it
do that?
depends.
Okay.
Like if it depends on the story and the budget and how big the illustration is going to
Mm-hmm.
run. So
What if the illustrator is like, I'm famous and I've
Yeah.
been working for X number of years and I need to
I have
get
so much
paid
clout.
more than
I have this many Twitter
that
followers.
kid from,
I don't think I would not accept Twitter followers. As a
Okay,
reason,
okay.
but-
Currency? No, okay.
Yeah, currency. Yeah, I'll pay you in Twitter followers. How
Yeah.
about that?
yeah, oh yeah.
That would actually
Paying
not
the
be so
Twitter
bad if they
followers.
each gave me $1.
Yeah. I mean, it just depends on our budget. So if we're spending X amount on photos and other illustrations in the issue, then I have to be like, sorry, we don't have the money.
I think we've all heard that a lot, though. Like, sorry, no. Or like,
Yeah.
if you want that much money, then we can't do this job.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to do that, like, be aware that that's a possibility. Like, that you're going to say, like, okay, well then I got to find somebody else to do it, which I've certainly had to do before. I mean, I don't often budge that far in the budgets, but only because I mean, like in the time that I've been there, we've pushed our illustration budgets up like pretty significantly, like from the first couple of years we were doing. I'm not going to give you the numbers, but like I mean, I think they've more than doubled like for a cover illustration. I mean, it's been 10 years or whatever, but like, they've gone up pretty considerably. I think because I've been sort of pushing to get people a reasonable rate, kind of up front. Like I try to do that negotiating up front, like with my sort of bosses. Not that they're like resistant to it, but it's not like I'm. The only time I don't like that is when I get the impression. Like if you really need more money, or you really like think that that's not a good amount or whatever, you really like just could use more for whatever reason, like totally fine. I don't like getting the impression like that you think that I'm lowballing you with this, like,
That's
that
what my
like, here's my
friends would say.
negotiation number, like I'm giving you this low number, I can go up as high as this, but like I'm gonna see if I can use car sales when you're down, like I'm giving you the number that I think is, this is what I can pay for that project,
I
Like, and
guess
sometimes I can like scrape together something else from somewhere else, but like, it's not like, I don't have a negotiation number that I start out with, which I think that would be
I
kinda
guess from
shitty.
our
Make it
point of view, oftentimes we feel like you guys have a little bit of a different agenda than we do, obviously, because you guys want to make a good product at the end, and you want to have a good thing to finish, and you want to have balance the budget and make your bosses happy and everything, and also like we have a different set of priorities for us too, and maybe like, I don't know, for whatever reason we need more money that month, or and so and because my friend said the exact same thing as you, like she was like, it's annoying to think that like illustrators feel that we're not doing our best to get you the most money that we can, but then I kind of feel like I don't know if every art director is necessarily looking out for us,
Fair enough, and I don't know that either. I'm sure
Right.
there is somebody that's giving you that lowball number, but like, I don't know. Yeah.
There's bad art directors out there, guys.
Yeah.
And
It's hard to tell,
illustrators.
though.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like so. I guess my point is more like not don't ask. Like I think you should ask. Like if you want to ask. But just like kind of be aware of your tone when you're asking. Like don't.
Don't be a dick.
And if it's
Yeah.
someone you've worked with before, like if I hired you and you were like, oh, I'm having a rough month and I know you paid me this much last time, but can you go up to this much this time because this or this, I'd be like, cool, because you've done stuff for me before, and I'm cool. So.
Guys, I think we may need to wrap up.
Oh, okay.
But
Just
do
getting
we have
into
any
this.
questions from the audience? We can maybe take one or two.
Can see nothing from
I see a question right here.
Oh, so like how we get from sketch to finish?
I feel like we're very similar in a way, except that you,
Whoa. We're not similar in that way.
Except that you know how to sit in a chair.
because I feel like we both kind of do the art school thing where you work really small, for sketch and blow it up and then kind of trace it.
Yeah, we went to the same college, so
Oh, there is that too.
yeah. So maybe we have a little thread of similarity, but you work in the computer for your finals.
Yeah.
I still do everything traditionally. I paint with gouache on paper, so actually that's a pretty interesting process when it comes to revisions, when it comes to finals, because usually it doesn't need to be revised because like the sketch is where that comes in handy. You kind of like explain what's going to happen, and you have references of other pieces that you've done, so it's like it'll look somewhat like this. But yeah, painting everything by hand still and scanning it into the computer and emailing it. So a lot of the Photoshop stuff is like post-production. Yeah. Do we pick who ask questions?
Yes, you may pick who.
Choose a way.
You pick. Why do I pick?
Okay, I'll pick this guy
Yeah.
in the plaid shirt. Yeah, I think it just depends what the job is for. Like, speaking for my magazine, we have like no money for art because we get stock photos, and so when I want to assign like a huge illustration that's like over a spread, I can get a little bit of a bigger budget, but if it's small, it's it's hard to justify it going up like triple the price or double the price. So it just kind of depends, and then it kind of depends on how much art we're shooting and illustrating for that specific issue. But yeah, it's up to us to go to the editor or the COO and be like, okay, we need to increase the art budget. I don't know how it is at.
Yeah, I mean, not speaking for anybody else. I mean, for me, I was just talking about how that actually is something I have been doing. We've raised our rates, but I can't speak for anybody else. I mean, I think when you're talking about, magazine stuff, not to get like Econ 101, but like I think when the circulation of that magazine is a quarter of what it was in 1983, it's like, I don't think that's entirely, malicious intent that's keeping those prices relatively low. I don't know what the solution to that is other than
Take more advertising jobs. Good.
yeah.
Let's take one more. There's a question at the top. Yes, you in the red shirt. Instagram.
I'll say something about this.
Do it.
Okay. Well, I use Instagram. I used it for a long time a few years ago because I didn't update my website, and I used it to kind of take photos of what I was doing to let, first of all, my parents know that I was alive. And then gradually some people like found that I also was posting pictures, and like just random people started coming and following. I think as of like the last 2 or 3 years, I've somehow amassed like a huge number of followers, but a lot of times it's, random people who just saw like that their friend liked this picture, and it just kind of spreads like wildfire. But then I do have to say that I also occasionally get the random art director or client who sees something on my Instagram, or like either sees that I have a lot of followers or sees that, they like my work and they hire me for something. So there's definitely been jobs that have been specifically for social media. Like some brands will look for people to like plug their products into and, have them like address a different audience. Other times, like they find your work through Instagram and then they hire you for like a print or, another type of job that doesn't require you to actually post on Instagram. So I think it's just one of those channels that, some people are more comfortable using it than others. Some people like to mix their work and their personal life in Instagram. It's kind of like evolves in its own way depending on what kind of personality you have with it. I think it's just one of the many ways that you can show your work these days. So I think it's a good thing, and I wouldn't try so hard to like curate the Instagram necessarily. I feel if you're comfortable with showing a certain amount of work in a certain type of way, that should just be your style. And, if you want to use it or not, that's also your choice.
But one last thing. It is interesting to see that I was starting to get some requests from clients to where they want me to do like a couple of Instagram posts as part of the deal, like it's like print campaign or like a motion thing or whatever, and then also you need to plug it a couple times on your Instagram account. And maybe it'll be like you with the product and then your artwork's like behind you on the table and you're in your studio, it's not even really about the work in some aspects. So it's kind of interesting how it's sort of changing from, as an illustrator, like it was never really about our face or about like us as a personality or a character or whatever. It was just about the work, and now it's kind of becoming something a little bit more than that. And I don't know if that's good or bad. Huh?
We just want to know who you are.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually a really interesting thing to me, because then it's like they want not just your work, but they want like your endorsement.
Yeah,
in this
exactly.
weird way, which is like.
Yeah.
I'm sure it can be.
And
Like,
yeah, so I mean, I think the bottom
Way
line
to get
is
some extra money.
yeah,
Get some
It's usage,
sponsors.
isn't it?
yeah, and the bottom line is it's something to be taken seriously. I think that's what we're saying.
Oh, what, social media and
Yeah,
Instagram?
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's worked to Illustrator's advantages. So
It's made for us in a way,
yeah, image documentation. I definitely put a little bit of everything. So I'll sometimes take a picture of a sketch or like a finish or like something in context. So it's like a finished product and then like the thing that's in print, just to show like other people how I work. And it's like a little invitation to my space and the way that I operate. But then lately I've been kind of sick of posting just my work. So then I've been posting pictures of like, look at this dead bird wing on the street in New York. Look at this gross city I live in. This is my inspiration. So I like to mix it up a little bit.
Dark.
Dark.
And that's the last word.
Okay.
That's where we're ending that.
We'll leave it there. Panel, thank you. Eric, thank you. Ping, Sarah, Josh, thank you very much.
To the art director for whatever reason, like, like the lines that like, well, this line represents, I'm going to put two people in the background here, but like, and I like that sketch, but I like that sketch as long as it comes with, the 2 paragraphs explaining what every line is. You know what I mean? Like, I like the loose sketch with the conversation. Like,
Right.
and I'm going to do it in this style. Like, here's an example of this other piece where I did this kind of technique. Oh, I'm going to do this bit over here. I'm planning something like this. Which, is usually not a problem that I can just kind of ask that question and get that information. But I don't know, I've had both extremes of that lately in this sort of, I don't know.
I was always under the impression that it was good to send something with no explanation, because if you're able to see what's happening, then it's a good image, But if I have to write a paragraph, then for me, that seemed like kind of a failure on my part,
Well, but that's the thing, is I think that would be a failure of a final piece, right. But it's not a failure of a sketch, because the sketch shouldn't, if the sketch was everything, you wouldn't need to do a final.
Right.
Right, like, so, and
because I'm in the loose sketch category, and I like to have a little bit of the mystery involved with that. But I don't know. You're a little different, maybe. Right, Pam?
I'm also in the loose sketch camp, but I do throw some color in there for, pretending that I'm in the tight sketch camp. But I think it really does depend. Like, I definitely use the sketch in the final. I kind of like blow it up to size and I trace it onto the paper that I'm going to be painting the final on. But I don't also want to surprise anyone. So it's like loose enough to the point where I feel like if we both understand it, then it's fine. Or if they need it to be cleaned up, then that's been requested before as well. But overall, loose is kind of the way to go. And also it makes the final a little bit more surprising and more interesting, I suppose.
Because we want to be surprised to a certain extent.
But a good
right?
surprise, not like a "what have you done" surprise.
Yeah.
yeah, sorry.
I just want to ask, has that happened to you, where you go to a final and someone's like, oh no? Like after they approve the sketch?
I think maybe it was more of the technique in the final. It wasn't the sketch that was misinterpreted. It was like, oh, we thought it would look more like this other piece that you did. So I think then it's harder.
Now we're diving into American Illustration 34. And we have our book designer coming up first. Eric, hi. Hi. I just say hi to everybody. Good to see you. Ping, hi. How are you? Nice to see you. But make your way carefully across the stage. Hi. I'm good. How are you? Hi. How are you? You can't yet. So very, very pleased to welcome our next panel. And again, we're doing the same thing. 2 art directors, 2 illustrators come together to have a conversation about everything that's important, right? Big, heady questions, nuts and bolts questions, all kinds of things. So again, no big introductions. You can find them online. But on your far left, we begin with Eric Skillman from the Criterion Collection, a juror for the book, a designer for the book, who designed the book. Next, we have Ping Zhu, illustrator.
To show that in a sketch, and then you just like attach references of previous work. So that's been the only bad surprise.
It's definitely happened to me. Yeah.
Not by me, though.
No. God, no.
A little bit by me.
I haven't worked with you guys yet, so prepare yourselves.
Yeah. Well, I don't. It's sort of been something that's been on my mind a little bit lately because I've had sort of both extremes of the experience where I have some illustrators will send me just these incredibly tight sketches, and we've like fall in love with the sketch, and then the actual final comes in, and it's very, very close to the sketch, but it's, you know, it's not that much better. You know, like it's not. It's like there was something in the loose, whatever. You know, which is always sort of disheartening to have to tell somebody like, I just liked your sketch a little better than what this was. You know, we've published a couple sketches recently, recently, which is, I mean, that's an awkward thing. But then the flip side of it is, I feel like I've been getting more. I feel like I've been getting the sketches that are like the sketch you do for yourself instead of the sketch that communicates something.
Who's featured in this year's annual. And next, Sarah Garcia, art director from Ink Magazine, a juror for this year's book. And then we have Josh Cochran, illustrator, who's also honored in this year's book. So lots of questions have been passed around, Eric. Can I throw to you to start things off?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so the thing we sort of talked about maybe touching on is just the idea of, I just want to talk about people's sketch processes and what, as illustrators, you guys are, you know, what kind of thinking goes into the kind of sketches you send, for like a tight sketch versus a loose sketch, or a color sketch versus a black and white sketch, or, you know, whatever details, and then hopefully talk a little bit about what that translates to on the art director side of like what we have to do with that sketch once we get that sketch, and you know what we're looking to see and what you're looking to tell us, essentially.
I'm also kind of interested to see what you guys prefer, like, you know, because I feel like there's 2 camps, right? Like the loose sketch illustrator and the tight sketch illustrator, where the sketch is almost like the final.